friends, this is Trish, and welcome to Teacher Therapy. Today we have a very exciting guest named Christian. He recently finished his first year of teaching, and he's just going to tell us how that year went for him. So let's start out, Christian. What initially got you interested in the field of education?
Yeah, so education was honestly kind of a surprise for me. It was something that I was actually recommended because originally I was doing caregiving, but that was something where I couldn't handle seeing people decline in health, and that was really taking a toll on me. So I kind of got out of that game, and other people were like, "You like working with people, why not why not teach?" And so that was kind of when I got into that. Took up that recommendation and totally ended up really enjoying being a teacher out of that.
Awesome. Well, that kind of leads me to my next question. Did you feel like your teacher education program prepared you for the classroom, or was it a little bit of a shock at all?
I would say that it did not prepare me at all. I genuinely feel like all of my time in college did not prepare me for the actual classroom at all. And some of the advice that I've been given from other veteran teachers that I've been around is that you're not an actual teacher until around year 5. And I genuinely feel that's because you're continuously building this library of experiences and just building your own knowledge pool of being a teacher.
Definitely. I can totally relate to that. I actually didn't even go the traditional route. I had a bachelor's degree in something totally different. So I had like 5 weeks of training, but it was always funny to me because when I would talk to new teachers that had gone the traditional route, they still said they felt exactly the same way when they got in the classroom. Like it was a totally different world, just the theories versus actually being in the classroom, which leads me to ask, what was student behavior like? Did you find that surprising, or how did that go for you?
So I I kind of have this really hot take on it. I don't think kids are any different nowadays. I think our environment that we're putting them is really different than, like, for example, when I was a kid going through school. I didn't have any really insane behaviors, but there was definitely a lot of things where it's like it's a kid being a kid, but I don't have any actual bite behind any of my words. So there's no actual consequences for I have no way of actually having them behave in respectable manners other than doing it for the goodness of their hearts.
Definitely. So, what did that feel like? Because I know that they say one of the hardest things to develop as a new teacher is the teacher persona. So, did you find yourself kind of struggling to figure out how to interact with the kids? And what did you end up deciding on, like how to keep the classroom under control?
A lot of it was just being patient and just honestly trying to be as much of a friend as possible, which really kind of sucks because you definitely want to be like this kind of leader or kind of like person of power role as a teacher, but you're really just not, because honestly the kids just have more power than you. Their parents have more power than you. Anyone in admin has more power than you, and it just really kind of diminishes any power I have. An example I have of this is I had a kid who was upset at me, so they left my classroom, and there's like no consequences that I could do about it. I reported it. They came back like 20, 30 minutes later with cake. And that was just like a really big slap in the face. And it's like, I don't even know where they got the cake from. And now they're super happy though that they have cake, and everyone's like, "Oh, can I have some cake?" And it's like, what is going on here?
Absolutely. Yeah, that was really my struggle too, because I feel like the educator is put in kind of an impossible role. Because on the one hand, we're supposed to have enough authority to actually say, here, student, this is what you're supposed to do and do it. But then we don't have any practical way of enforcing it if they're like, no, I'm not going to do it. So I too felt that pressure to kind of almost be like a big sister role instead of a teacher role, but really effectively, like kids don't listen to their big sister that much either. So it's just this really weird negotiation where you have to convince the kids to like you enough to listen. But then there's some kids that inherently don't like the teacher because they're in the role of the teacher. And I just found it to be maddening. So did you feel like eventually you kind of fell into a good rhythm with the students, or did you feel like it was kind of a tug of war the whole year?
Yeah, I think I definitely fell into a good rhythm with a lot of the kids. Obviously, not everyone's going to like you, and that's just kind of a fact that it's hard to have that happen. But I definitely fell into that where I try to have as many kids like me as possible. And things honestly worked out really well once that kind of got into place. Having set routines really helped. Having honest discussions with kids seemed to really help because they're people and all that. Uh, But the kids that weren't going to engage that way with you, you're just not going to get anything out of them. And honestly, that's really heartbreaking knowing that you're having a kid that is just not going to engage.
Definitely. So you taught in the special education role. Did you have a full class of students, like 20 kids, or did you have small groups? How did that end up working out?
Yeah, so classes were averaging from 28 to 32. I had 6 classes, and it was uh it was interesting. Uh I actually really like a lot of the setup that I had. Since that we were in that setup, we had 2 teachers in a classroom at all times for us. We had a co-teacher method, and honestly, I really like that, especially as a new teacher because I had someone else in the classroom that I could bounce ideas off of. Really happy with my co-teacher. We worked really, really well together, and we just really vibed. It was great. That being said, it really felt like it should have been a smaller classroom. Even with having 2 adults in the room at all times, it probably would have been better if it was a smaller class. Definitely probably like around the 20s, low 20s. Definitely seems like it would have just been a better class all around.
Definitely. So that's interesting. I don't know if I've ever heard of that before. Did you have to teach all of the different subjects, or did you get to just focus on one specialty? How did that work?
Yeah, we just did English. So our setup was also kind of different from any that I've ever seen either. It was called the push-in method. So something that was really unique about that was that at any given time, only a third of our classroom was special education. So that meant that they were mixed in with all the other kids that, for all intents and purposes, we call normal. Honestly, they did just as well in the classes as the normal kids, you know? But a lot of our design was based around that. And one of my biggest gripes that I would have about this whole method is that our grade lacked honors classes. So I have the kids that are obviously needing the special education benefits and the honors kids in the same classroom. And what really made this a very difficult and challenging environment is that then having to teach at multiple different levels all at the same time. And honestly, what this really means is that the honors, the higher end work class, they're just not getting anything because we have to teach to the bottom. We have to make sure that the kids that really need the support are getting the support. And that just kind of leaves our honors kids just for themselves.
That's so interesting. So you basically, what grade levels did you teach?
I just taught 10th.
Okay, so there's 10th grade English classes, you have 2 teachers, there's the entire special ed population, basically classes with, honors or gifted and regular, and it's all blended together. So how did you and the co-teacher instruct? Like, did you guys take turns with the direct instruction up in front of the class, or was one more like a behavior support and like pulling small groups?
So how we generally did it is that we generally had one person and we rotated it frequently between each other. We had one person being the direct instructor for the class, and then we had the other person just kind of rotating the room and stopping in, just like leaning over and whispering and be like, "Hey, are you getting this? Can I help you with that?" And that really helped a lot because there's generally a good amount of people, not even the special ed group, that really needs that kind of one-on-one check-in of they've clearly checked out because they are just not catching one key thing.
Interesting. Well, I think it's so cool that you had 2 teachers in the room. Like, that's got to be a huge plus for sure. So, you mentioned earlier in one of the emails you sent me that you felt a little bit, you had questions about some of the curriculum choices. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so for starters, I- I'm a really big America person. I only saw America through the lens of my classroom. I think I would dislike America. It's kind of hard whenever I hear any Republicans really going on about how our curriculum is anti-America, and then I take a look at a lot of the books that I was required to teach these books, and it's like if you really wanted to make an anti-America case, you can absolutely do this, but these are all really good, solid books. It's just that we're teaching them one after the other, and it's all kind of making this picture of, yeah, this is why America sucks. And we never had a book that was like, and here's why America's actually good at it. It was all things like George Takei's They Call This Enemy, where we literally, World War II, all the terrible things that we did to the Japanese population, which actually happened. And it's a book I would genuinely recommend to people, but it's like we keep on stacking all these different books one after the other that just show the terrible sins of America, which there are plenty of.
That's really interesting. So, did your co-teacher kind of feel the same way, or was it something that y'all didn't really end up talking about too much?
I think we talked about it once or twice, and it was generally, oh, wow, I kind of can see that kind of thing conversation that we had at that point, but that was really as far as that went. And again, they were all books that we generally really enjoyed and thought that they had really good morals. So it's not any of these books where we're going to be like, we should ban these books. It's like none of that. But it's all things that's like, if you really wanted to look at a narrative, it's all going one direction.
Interesting. So I'm from a little bit of a different era. I graduated high school in 2005, and I think we read, some of the normal books like Fahrenheit 451, To Kill a Mockingbird. We actually had a book called Lies My Teacher Told Me as one of the curriculum books, and that was probably the edgiest book we had because it kind of questioned, some of the, narratives that we have in American history. But generally speaking, I feel like it was a pretty normal education. So, did you have normal, what you would say, books when you were, growing up in high school in like English and, in social studies? Or do you feel like this is something like radically different than what you experienced in your own high school education?
No, I don't think it's any radically different. I think these are just kind of, well, I guess the only thing that I would say that would be different is that a lot of the books that we were required were lower than grade level for our reading. The example I previously went with George Takei's They Call This Enemy really is not a 10th grade level reading book. You brought up the To Kill a Mockingbird, and that's another one that we had in our curriculum as well. And I definitely see that as being a 10th grade, but that was definitely our highest level book that we were required to teach. And that kind of hurts a little bit.
So, I guess since we're on the topic of it, did you ever end up talking to history teachers? Did they mention anything about feeling like history was kind of changing, like the way it's taught at all, or did that ever come up?
So I was really kind of a bubble in my school where I was teaching at. I had a small group of teachers that I was familiar with, and that was it. I really didn't leave my little area. We had a pretty big high school that I taught in, so it was very departmentalized, and I knew my people, and that was really it.
Yeah, because I've had a few people email me with kind of similar thoughts about sort of feeling like the curriculum was changing a bit in a way that is negative towards America. So I was just curious if that's like a conversation that a lot of people are having or if it's kind of rare. The only thing that I can really think of that was, by today's standards, super shocking was in fourth grade. I was taught in Texas that basically slave owners were friendly towards their slaves and it was kind of like a big happy family. And looking back, I'm like, whoa, that's kind of weird. But I'm wondering if the pendulum is swinging a little bit where maybe the only thing that's being presented are things that are negative and nothing positive. I just find the whole topic really interesting.
And I think it is an overcorrection that we are currently making. I think that a lot of the things that we are bringing up are really good to bring up. I think we're just not moderating it or bringing anything else into the conversation. And I think that's where the real damage is because it's nothing that we are bringing up that I think is like, oh my goodness, I can't believe we're teaching this. But it's all things that's like, we just keep adding to it. It's all additive.
That definitely makes sense. And I just think in general, as humans, it seems like the propensity is to like swing to the other pendulum. I feel like a lot of that is what has happened in education, just in general, even with things like discipline. Maybe there was a time where discipline was way too harsh and kids didn't have a voice at all. Now it feels like the pendulum is swung to like kids are ruling the roost and teachers don't have a voice and kids can do whatever they want. So I think finding that like sweet spot in the middle is always kind of hard. What was your school's discipline policy like? I forgot to ask about that. Did they do something kind of like PBIS where it's positive interventions, or was it kind of like something that they left up to the teacher? How did that work?
Yes, it is PBIS.
Okay.
And it generally felt like there just wasn't any discipline. I will also say, though, that we're in a really good area. We have a really good school district. We didn't have any like insane behaviors or really, I never had any kids that were really aggressive or just ever flipping out on me. I never once was threatened or felt threatened in my classroom. We did have that going for us.
That's a really good thing. I definitely think that, depending on the region and just the area, the amounts of misbehavior can be radically different for sure. So I'm curious, what were your interactions with parents like? I know sometimes for a new teacher, parents can be the best ally or the worst nightmare. So how did you find that interaction to be?
Parents are actually really different when you have a special ed population. It seems like a lot of my time after school was being stuck in meetings with parents, which is super awesome and super terrible at the same time because it's like this is all of my prep time that I had scheduled for today, and it's me sitting here talking with parents about their kids, which is awesome. I learned so much about kids that you're just never going to know because I'll be honest, all my quote unquote normal kids, we never had this interaction with their parents. Like they never sat down, had this one on one with me and the team that's going over and helping the kid. So it's great. I got so much information out of these meetings. These were the meetings where I actually learned all the things I needed to know about the kids. And it sucks because it's like we get a bunch of paperwork about each and every kid that we're serving, but it really doesn't tell us what we really need for these kids. So these meetings with these parents, they really opened my eyes to a lot of the kids, the situations, a lot of their struggles. And for me, that was so worth the time investment that I put in and got to know the kids out of these. And a lot of the times the kids did show up for these meetings as well. And when they did, that really helped the meeting as well. And that also just further got more information for me. And that was just wonderful when that happened. That being said, a lot of the other parents were really standoffish and just didn't get very much interaction out of them. And it's something that I've been wondering about as I've been a teacher is I often hear people say that kids are the most important thing to them. And after being a teacher, I don't know how much I believe that because there's a lot of times where I just see really standoffish parents or I see kids where their entire life is just their cell phone and that's really their parenting for a lot of them it seems like.
That is very true, definitely. So a lot of my special education teacher friends had like mountains of paperwork and data and testing. Did you have that experience too?
Yes. On the other side of that, though, a lot of that was done by the case managers. So, what that really meant for me as the teacher in the classroom was I was just compiling the data and passing it on to them. So, they had to do with the bulk of that paperwork, whereas I was just compiling it and trying to keep as open of a conversation and dialogue with them as much as possible. I believe I was in contact mostly with 5 case managers, and it was pretty daily emails to each of them, sometimes multiple depending on what was going on.
So, what was your work life balance like? Did you find yourself working for hours and hours outside of school, or did you kind of find a way to contain it within the day?
So, once again, I gotta bring back I was a co-teacher. If I was not a co-teacher, I probably would have worked about an extra 2 hours every day outside of it. But being a co-teacher, there was someone else that was there to help me with all the grading and all the paperwork. We had a really good setup where we try to split the work as much as possible. Sometimes it obviously didn't work out that way due to whatever's going on in either of our lives, or just one of us was taking care of a problem and it just turned out to be bigger than we originally expected it to be. But typically, I did not have to do a bunch of extra, but that was simply just because we had someone else in the air in the room.
Nice. Well, that sounds really good. It sounds like you had a lot of support with a co-teacher, with case managers. How did you find your administration to be? Did you feel like they were kind of hands off, or did you ever feel like they were kind of hovering or micromanaging? How did that work out?
So my administration was mostly hands off. I know I'm very different from a lot of the people that you have on your show because I really enjoyed my administration. Administration was really, really good to me. I only have good things to say about them. If I was asked, do you want to work for them in the future? The answer is absolutely yes. They were great to me. They were always super open with me. They explained everything that was going they were going through and what options they had available. And communication was just always really, really straightforward and this is what's going to happen. These are what we are doing. This is what we are currently thinking. It was just great.
Good. Well, I'm always happy to hear hear relatively happy teacher interviews because I feel like so many of us just feel like we got beat up by the education system. But it sounds like you're, working with a good, solid population of students that, don't have major behavior problems. It sounds like you have a lot of support. So were there any times during your first year where you're like, I don't know if I want to be doing this? Or did you just kind of feel throughout the whole time like I'm in exactly the right role? This is what I'm meant to be doing?
I had a mixture of both of those because I've kind of touched on it earlier, but I really enjoy being a teacher. If honestly, if all of my interactions of being a teacher was just working with kids, I think this would be just the dream job because I really enjoyed working with kids. It was just a great experience. I think they're fun. It's just all the other stuff that goes along with that is just really kind of soul sucking and just kind of crappy because I mean no one wants to grade a bunch of papers, especially if you're an English teacher. It's if you assign an essay, I now have to read 180 papers and have them all graded. And it's not just like, oh yeah, this is the right number for this question. It's what did they actually write? How's their English? How's their diction? And it's just like, does this actually make sense? Was this actually written by an AI? Because that's a new thing that we now have to look for, and it's just a lot of busy work for that.
Yeah. So I'm still kind of intrigued by the way your school works. Is it that every subject has a similar thing where they have like a fully included special education teacher for the subject? So like when they go to math, is there two teachers? When they go to history, is there two teachers? Or is that something they just do for certain subjects at your school?
It was just certain subjects. From my understanding, it was the core subjects that had this push-in method that was being in place. I would recommend having two teachers in the classroom. From my experience, it was just amazing. I have heard from others where it hasn't worked as well, but that's normally based around when two teachers just don't work together well. And at that point, it's just a kind of a management issue.
I've certainly had that happen before. That is definitely really, really rough when like your team teachers don't get along for sure. So I'm kind of curious about grading. The topic of like standards-based grading has been sort of a hot button issue. Do you have that at your school or do they have the traditional A through F grading system?
So I didn't like our grading system that we were using. So we used A through F, but we were using a different grading method. It's currently eluding my memory what it's called, but essentially it was proficiency based. And the low end of our scale was if you really turned in anything to us, you were guaranteed to get 50% of the grade for it. So it was really friendly in that regard. Just there's times where I felt like it was a little overly friendly, where literally if you just do one part or like you just put your name and a couple of words, you get like 50 to 60% of a grade, and that really kind of sucks. There's also kind of the issue of you definitely feel when a student is behind, not because of a disability, but mostly because they have just been pushed through a system. And it you can definitely tell the kid that's like, all right, this is 10th grade, but you're really at a 5th grade level of English. And it's because every year they're like, oh wow, yeah, you're not passing our class, but we're going to keep pushing you along through the system anyways. And next year we just expect that you'll catch up and you'll figure it out then. And that just never happens. So you have these kids that are like, I really failed the 5th grade, but now I'm in the 6th grade and I don't have that fundamental 5th grade ability. So now it just compounds the issue. And now I'm still basically at the 5th grade level trying to figure that out. But now I'm in the 7th grade trying to figure out what's going on in the 7th grade class. And it just keeps compounding and compounding until they end up in my classroom. And we do have some time to, I mean, we do have the extra people in the room to try and help them, but it's a lot of things is, yeah, I helped this student write this paper and I see my words in here and I'm really happy that they're starting to get it. The other teacher's like, hey, this sounds like you. And it's like, yeah, you got me. It does sound like me. And yeah, that's kind of how a lot of papers ended up that way.
So did you feel like the fact that all they had to do pretty much is put their name on a paper and get a 50 or 60, did that kind of stop people from turning things in, or did they just constantly do the absolute bare minimum?
I would say a mixture of the two, yeah. We had some students that were clearly on and maybe above level that figured out the name of the game pretty quickly and are like, I don't need to really push myself to achieve in this class. And they just did the minimum and they just did their own thing after that. And since they have technology available at all times, it's really easy to do the bare minimum and then check out and be on TikTok. And that kind of sucks. You can only call them out so many times before they stop caring, and it's not like there's anything that we could do to them to stop that. So that just kind of sucks.
Definitely. So, what was technology like in your classroom? Were there like mandatory iPads or Chromebooks? Like, how did all of that work?
Yeah, so we had mandatory Chromebooks for everyone, which I have this love-hate relationship with because man, I sound old saying this, but I really enjoy pen and paper, and I think that's just a superior way of doing things. For one reason, you don't have to check to see if it was written by an AI. That's one of the things that was super nice for it. Is like other teachers like, wow, I having all these issues with AI. And it's like I had all of my kids write as much as I can on pen and paper, and I don't even have to worry about that. But honestly, technology has so many benefits to it. Them doing things on the Chromebook is like, all right, today we're going to research this topic, and everyone has the ability to research something. That's wonderful. On the downside of that, it's I'm walking around and there's so many kids that are on their Chromebooks, and it's like that's a video game or that's YouTube, or it's just like it's a super easy distraction. It's like right now we're talking to each other on computers. If I was a high school student, it'd be super easy to have like a video game window up here, have YouTube over here, have music going on right here. Uh, would be able to do that. I would probably do that if I was them because it's available.
So, I like to ask people, if you had a magic wand and could change anything in education right now, what would you prioritize? What do you think really needs to change in education?
Ooh, that's a. I really like when you ask this question. I thought I had an answer to it, and it's escaping me now. I would probably say the easiest answer is classroom size. I think that's just easiest answer of get it down to 15 to 22 kids max per teacher. And I think if I was in that setup, that would just seem ideal to me. Just having a really, honestly, a smaller classroom.
Definitely. So, what kind of advice would you have for new teachers? Because it sounds like you feel still pretty optimistic about education in general. So, if there's a new teacher and they're kind of struggling, what would you tell them?
I would tell them that it's unfortunately a trial by fire kind of profession. Definitely find other teachers in your area that are much more veteran and know a lot about the profession. I was very fortunate that I had teachers around me that were very open and willing to share the resources that they had collected over the years. You have to find those people. They have their library of information, and you need to start leeching as much off of them as possible. And a lot of them are going to be very receptive and very willing to share as much knowledge as they can. So as long as you can try and find those people, you're going to get the help that you need from those people. And those are really the people who are going to make the job bearable for you.
Definitely. So, we're about to go into a new school year. Is there any areas in your own, professional development or teaching that you're thinking, okay, I want to go into my second year teaching doing this different?
I would definitely say I want to get my routine down as soon as possible and hold that routine for as long as I can throughout the school year. For me, I think that was something I had a really rocky intro because new teacher, trying to figure out who I am as a teacher. So I think having that all set up as early as possible and actually knowing what I want it to kind of resemble. I want to have that just strong foundation and just have that set up from the get go. I think that'll be really good for me this time.
Awesome. So, my final question for you will be, do you see yourself being in a similar role as a classroom teacher in the next 10 years? Or have you ever desired to do something different within education in the future?
I think rather stay as a teacher. If I stay in it for the next 10 years, I think I want to try and stay in this role as much as possible. I've thought about maybe doing administration work, and I just think that the best part about being a teacher is teaching kids. All the other part of it just is really soul crushing. So it kind of keeps me from wanting to go into that.
Very understandable. Well, this has been awesome. I am totally, open to happy teachers out there. So for anybody in my audience, if you are a happy teacher that has had generally positive experiences, you're welcome on teacher therapy too. My biggest aim is just to have real voices of educators share their experiences. So we appreciate you for that, Christian, and we hope you have an awesome second year. So for my audience, if you want to interview with me, you can email me and we'll see you guys next time. Bye for now, everybody.